One station, many communities. It's your radio, Peterborough FM.
Peterborough FM. One station, many communities.
And welcome to Esoteric Discussions with me, your host, Valentine St. Aubin, a show where we go deep down into the rabbit hole. You can catch me every other Wednesday evening here from 9 on Peterborough FM and online. If you want to learn more about me, please visit my website at valentinesaintaubin.co.uk. Right, so it's the 16th of November 2011, and, well, we're coming into a Mercury retrograde phase, and of course we've been having computer problems, so that's why we're a little bit late starting this evening. I'm going to skip the intro because we've actually lost quite a bit of time, and I'm going to bring on my guest who is joining us this evening. I've got a great show lined up for you. You're going to like this one. Just to give you a brief introduction about who we're going to have with me this evening, his name is Roy Dutton, and, well, he's just a phenomenal character. He's been doing research since 1967, tracking, I don't know, what would you call it? He doesn't actually call it UFO, but aerial space objects, and that's led him to develop a theory, which he's called astronautical theory. And his research has basically encompassed over 43 years of solid scientific research. So this is going to be a very, very good show, a very interesting show. He's a very clever man, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So we're going to take a quick break, and when I return, hopefully we'll be joined by Roy if we don't have any other computer problems, and we'll start our interview. So when I tell you about Mercury retrograde, maybe you might believe me now. Right, so here we go. I have Roy with me on the line. He's just holding. So we're going to open up his mic and bring him on, and make sure that everything is okay on that side. How can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but it is still very faint.
Okay. Well, we can hear you
very... Can you hear me?
We can hear you very well.
Oh, good. That's all that matters, really, if I can understand what you're asking.
But as long as you can hear me, so you can hear the questions I need to ask. Right, so, well, we've run out a bit of time, and hopefully, if you don't mind, we'll try to get you back to continue what you're going to tell us this evening. I do understand what you're saying about the line. It does sound very crackly. There's a lot of white noise in the background.
I'm not much noise here, this end.
Okay, well, we're getting it on our side, so it sounds definitely like someone is listening in. So let's begin with your research. Tell us about, first of all, well, actually, let me introduce you to everybody that will be listening and is listening. Roy is a chartered engineer and a member of the Royal Aeronautical Society and a member of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers. His working life was spent in the British aerospace industry, working on many projects, commencing with rocketry and advanced space vehicle studies. He is the author of UFOs in Reality, Programmed Aerospace Monitors of Our Species, published by Author House. He has given many interviews on radio and television over the years, and given many talks and lectures worldwide. And he is going to absolutely blow your mind tonight, even though we have run out of time, but still what he has to share will still be very fascinating. And if you don't like to read, Roy does have a DVD series which you can buy, so you can also watch a lot of his research if you prefer to do that. So Roy, welcome to the show. I'd like to apologize for the difficulties we've been having. So please tell us how your research began, because you've been doing this for a long time.
Well, thank you, Valentine, for inviting me to be on your show, and I'm sorry we've had so many technical problems tonight. I began researching this subject because of the events that were occurring around the location I was in the 1960s and late 1960s, which was an area of Greater Manchester. And is that coming through all right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good.
Yep, I can hear you.
And it just snowballed from there, really. I wanted to know what these strange aerial craft, as I call them later, SACs, were, because people obviously were not just seeing lights in the sky, and these things hovering over their homes at night, with lights flashing and glowing sometimes all over, were obviously craft of some kind, but they certainly wouldn't be anything we'd produced.
Yes.
So it just took off from there. I began to research them and investigate how they were I was trying to find out how they worked, basically.
Now, had you had any previous interest in UFOs in general? Because you come from a scientific background.
Well, I was an engineer, really. My kind of engineer is an applied scientist, because we do research into things and try to understand how things work, try to make things work. What I think happened with me was that I had been introduced to the UFO topic while in the last years at school, in the grammar school, and a friend of mine had brought in the Adamski book, Flying Saucers Have Landed, and handed it to me because he knew I wanted to go into the aircraft industry. He handed it to me and said, "What do you make of this?" And I read it, and I thought, well, these things look interesting. The photographs looked interesting, but I didn't believe a word of what Adamski was claiming, basically. So I just thought, maybe there are better ways of flying than the ones we know about. And that's how it got me going. But I wasn't really interested in ETs and all that sort of thing, because we didn't really know much about these things in those days. And there wasn't a great deal of coverage in the press and so on. So then it was until later in 1967 when these other events started happening all around me.
Right.
After I'd had the experience of a crash course in astronautics, the science of flight in space, and I thought I would apply that knowledge to whatever I was looking at. And because I was certain, just as the people who seen them were, that whatever they were, if they were not hallucinations, they were not of this planet. We hadn't created them. And it seemed to me, as I concluded, it's all written up in the book, of course, that they seemed to be quantum mechanically propelled rather than mechanically propelled, which of course I know is a subject you're particularly interested in too,
Yes.
quantum mechanics.
Yes.
So,
Could you just explain a bit further from your point of view, as obviously this is an area that you worked in, what is the difference when you say it was quantum mechanically propelled?
Quantum
Is that
mechanics is
Uh-huh.
really are the mechanics of the nuclear region,
Mm-hmm.
Nuclear and subnuclear region, and the rules of quantum mechanics are completely different to the
Yes.
ones of Newton and so on, which we follow for normal engineering. So obviously, these things were obviously out of our possibilities because we didn't have the physics, basically.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have the physics to create anything like that if they were real. So I first began trying to prove that they were real. Again, the book explains this, how I investigated them. And I actually found that I thought, well, if I can't understand how they're propelled, and they are real, they seem to be coming from space, coming down from the sky and going back into the sky. So how can I check what they're up to? So I checked the ground distribution of the things. Where had they visited? Because they were mostly close encounters, these things. Not close encounters of the third or fourth kind, but close encounters which people had seen, and people had seen craft at close quarters.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, it was clear to me from that, and again, the proof is in the book and in the videos, that they were interested particularly in new developments in Britain, in England at that time. And at the centre of those new developments was the M6 motorway, which had just been opened between Preston in the north and...
Interesting. Why would they have been interested in that specific location?
Well, because it was our latest major development.
Mm-hmm.
And they seemed to me possibly to be interested in our progress, technological progress, particularly. So this distribution did seem to indicate that what their interest was, because at that time the motorway was only open between Preston and Stafford, and they were still building flyovers and things like that, linking the motorway to towns and cities like Manchester and so on.
Very interesting.
And Stafford. So it did seem to me to be a good reason for their interest. But then I did an analysis of the places they'd visited, locations, and found that major changes in the countryside were particularly of interest to them, it seemed, and they were particularly interested in changes of that kind in the vicinity of ancient sites.
That's fascinating, yeah.
And in fact prehistoric sites, some of them, and there were things that were marked on the map, I mean, I was looking at the events that occurred within 1 mile radius of the witness.
So, like, for example, a site like Stonehenge, they would be tracking. You've noticed sort of lots of movement there.
Stonehenge didn't figure in that particular as a site visited at that time, but it did figure in the first place when I looked at the distribution patterns, and I saw that Stonehenge was in the middle of them at the time. So that really made me look for ancient sites when I was doing when I was looking to see where they'd visited, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So that gave me a clue that they may have been here for a long time.
coming back and forth.
Yes, and they were somehow updating their maps in the locations that they'd already mapped in the past, and that when we were putting a motorway through it or something like that, or a new housing estate or a new factory in that area, they then seemed to concentrate on that area for a while, as if they were updating their maps accordingly. It was all very interesting. The way it was developing was far beyond any of my expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And once I got those sort of clues, I thought, well, I can't just leave this. I've got to do something with it. And I did monitor the events, and for 6 years after that, and in Britain. And I monitored in that 6 years fireball events.
I see, okay. So these are reports of people seeing...
They were very brilliant, some of them, lit up the countryside. Sometimes they maneuvered about. They were very slow moving sometimes. And they were certainly not in... They were in good air conditions. They were not in thunderstorm conditions or anything like that. So we could rule out that theory, that they were thunderbolts. So I then made a special study of those, in fact, and then decided, after I'd done all this after 6 years, that I needed to look for the signs from space to apply my astronautical knowledge to see if there was any sign that they were coming from space, any indication, positive indication. And for that I needed a global database from all over the world.
Right, so you moved from the UK to everywhere else. 2
catalogues came my way. Again, I explain all this. And these 2 catalogues presented me with more than 2,000 cases, I think.
Right.
And some of them went back into the 1800s.
Right, documented cases of UFO sightings going back into the 1800s. They'd been recorded.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, there was a case in particular that stands out in my memory, where passengers on a ship, a sailing ship, I think, somewhere off Newfoundland, I think it was, they had seen a glow under the water at night, adjacent to the ship, and suddenly a ball of light had come out of the water and hovered around the ship and then shot off to the easterly, in that particular case. Well, we're talking technology there. We're not talking just lights in the sky. We're talking something about a controlled object of some kind. So this is where I think the people have often consulted astronomers about UFOs because of their being in the sky. And the astronomers usually poo-poo the whole idea because it's nothing to do with astronomy, basically, at that level. It's to do with the technology, and they're not technologists.
Yeah.
So they're not trained to know the difference. But what they would do in that circumstance is just dismiss it as one of those things, that people had been drinking or something beforehand, and they would just dismiss a situation like that, which they couldn't explain.
Yeah.
And that's what bedeviled this subject for many, many years. People who are regarded as the experts have, in fact, had no background that would help them to be experts in these circumstances. So this is one of the difficulties I had, basically, breaking through that barrier that has been set up because of the skepticism of people held in high regard, quite rightly, but who didn't really know anything about the subject. So that's been the problem.
And it's still around today.
It's still around today, yeah.
And even more so through food. And you know, as they always say, the more the establishment tries to make something look absolutely ridiculous or absurd, usually the more that there is truth in that.
That's right, yeah.
Yes.
And that's what I've been up against all these years.
Yes, and for a long time, yes.
For 20 years at least. And I've been trying to break through with this information I had. There was people I've spoken through UFOs and places and organisations like that.
Yes.
In public about this, but they just can't. Either they don't understand what I'm talking about, or they just prefer to just dismiss it out of hand, you see.
Because one of the basic points that you're trying to get across, and just for our audience who've just picked up a bit of this information this evening, and it's just such a shame that we're running out of time. But what you're saying is, you can tell what we're looking at by the advancedness of the craft, of the sightings that people are relating,
yes.
and you know that that's not something that we have the capability to produce.
Yes, the craft.
Yes, the types
things
of
I
craft.
call strange aerial craft. Yeah, they just were not capable. We were just not capable of reproducing them. So I knew we were dealing with otherworldly technology. And I was very sure that it was technology, and not just, phantoms and hallucinations and all the rest of it that people have attributed them to.
Well, and as you said as well, you were given all these files, over 2,000 case studies, going back to the 1800s, and if they're reporting certain anomalies in the sky, which does not adhere to the technology of its day, obviously it has to be something beyond us.
Yes.
That, it's deduction, isn't it? That's the truth right there.
Well, I would have thought so, but unfortunately people are generally reluctant to believe anything they can't explain.
Anything they can't explain, yeah.
As you may know from other, their responses to other things like ghosts and the like.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, yes, there's a lot more to the story.
There is, and if you would agree, can you come back and we can do this again and we get more time?
I'd be pleased to do that, yes.
Yes, because I would really love to devote a nice show to you and give you all the time that you deserve, because I love stuff like this. Anyone that listens to the show knows I love stuff like this.
I've got a lot more stuff. Which you'll love even more.
I'm sure.
Did that book arrive, by the way?
It did.
Oh, good.
And, that's another strange thing. I'll tell you about that when we get off the air. Well,
right, thank you.
We're going to end this because the recording is actually going to cut out, so we'll lose a lot of what we're saying anyway. So I don't want to lose any of the information. So we're going to have you come back. We'll try to get you on for the next show at the end of the month. So for the time being, I'm just going to close your mic. I'm going to call you back in about 5 minutes, okay?
Okay.
Thank you so much for holding on and trying to be with us this evening. And, well, we kind of got there anyway.
You're very welcome.
Okay, take care.
Okay.
So that's the show for tonight, guys. I'm not even going to play the theme music. I'm so annoyed with the technology. When I talk about Mercury retrograde, maybe now you might believe me. When I say Mercury retrograde phase, computer problems, mishaps with communication, anything mercurial, well, you saw it firsthand. Absolute chaos. And Mercury's not even officially retrograde yet, but there it is. So I'm going to end the show. Thank you all for being those that stuck around and listened, or those listening in the archives. This will be cleaned up, but you'll get part 2 of Roy Dutton, and his book is called UFOs in Reality, published by Author House. I'll be back on the 30th of November. Until next time, keep your eyes on the stars.
Pay close attention. Pay close attention. Pay close attention. Pay close attention. I'll take your brain to another dimension. I'll take your brain to another dimension. Pay close attention. Pay close attention. Pay close attention.
One station, many communities.